I heard that.
Whole sports all plays. Yeah. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making a place. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports all plays. Yeah.
All right. Welcome everybody to another episode of Loose Lugs. My name is Chris Osborne. I'm your host. My other host, Dustin Lewis. This is his first show. How we doing, Dustin?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Excited.
All right. Well, let's turn that into some pure content. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, Loose Lugs. We are presented by the ASAP All Sports All Plays Network, powered by Sports and Culture Media. I want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Freddie Henderson, Mr. Tony Hollinsworth, Mr. Jay Ness. These guys make this happen. They do all the production stuff. We just show up. I don't even put makeup on, we'll just make it happen. So let's roll right into some cool stuff. Dustin, I'll let you open the discussion here. What were your thoughts on the championship race?
I mean, wow. The energy around that race. If NASCAR wanted their Game 7 moment, I think they got it. Because going into that race, you had four drivers that had pretty much had dominated the year. Kyle Larson being the most dominant. And, NBC, MRN, they did an incredible job commentating this race. They did an incredible job. And like I said, if NASCAR wanted this Game 7 moment, they got it this race. They did an incredible job.
I would say all three races were, obviously, I think the most action-packed ending was the Xfinity. But all three races had a little bit of kick to them, all with a bit of a twist at the end. I would say the energy was amazing. When they spanned the cameras and showed everybody the outside of the track with all the campers, I was like, man, that is something like 500,000 RVs, or there's something crazy, some ridiculous number. That's amazing to see that kind of turnout for. It's the biggest race. You expect a lot of people, but that's a lot of people.
Definitely a lot of people. The hype that this generated is, it was like seeing the Daytona 500 almost. The amount of hype that this one race had, the amount of pull that it had. Wow. That's all I can pretty much say.
It was a great race too. It wasn't, one of those one guy dominated the race. We got to a point in the race where I wouldn't say it was anybody's race. I think Denny Hamlin was never really, in my book, wasn't a real contender. But Larson started it off looking strong. Chase took over. Then Truex, it seemed like for a while. If it stayed green, I think he had it.
Oh yeah.
And then that pit stop got Larson back in business, but it wasn't dominated by one person. And I think that's what ultimately you want in a race, is good, solid racing for the lead, and guys getting a chance to show what they've got. The Xfinity race, what else can you say? Came down to the very last lap on the last turn, and you had a guy, Daniel Hemrick, 0 Xfinity Series wins. This is there's more to that. 2019, this guy was Rookie of the Year for Richard Childress Racing. They didn't think he was cut out. They replaced him the very next season after winning that award. He goes to an Xfinity. 2020 wasn't a great year for them. Still no wins, nothing flashy, very average. Even this year was quite average for, a Joe Gibbs Toyota in any series. And then to survive the playoffs and make it to, the last turn with a chance to win it, you can't ask for anything more than that. and
No.
the guy produced.
Yeah,
Um,
he produced when it mattered the most.
yep, and he will go down with his very first career win and his very first championship, all in the same race. That is that's pretty amazing.
I mean, fair play to him. I mean, that last lap. I mean, again, that it came down to the very last opportunity the Xfinity Series Championship did. And I mean, fair play to Hemrick. He did a great job. That one last move he did, that was perfect. If he wanted, that just showed how much he wanted to win that championship, to go as far as he did. And that's exactly what you want from as a NASCAR fan, is to
Yeah.
watch these guys get put in those situations and to see them send it in there and just going, if I don't do it, I'll at least want to do it and at least wreck the car and see if I couldn't do it and couldn't win. Because you don't want to get off. Yeah, if you don't want to get out the car and go, dang, I wonder what would happen if I didn't do that, or I did do that.
Yeah.
So fair play to Hemrick. Fair play.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like he raced dirty. I mean, like they said in the telecast, he could have just, gave him the bumper and just spun him out. He used the bumper, moved him up, went underneath. I mean, it wasn't exactly a clean move, but even Cindric said after the race, it could have been worse, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm upset with finishing second, but congratulations to him. So, I mean, I gained a lot of he gained a lot of respect from me with his post-race interview, talking about Austin Cindric. He was upset, controlled himself, and still, managed to convey that, everybody on his team had a great season no matter where they finished. And guy's moving up. That's the way I see it. He's going on to Cup next year. Hemrick's not. This was more important to him, and it worked out.
Yeah, and again, Cindric, I mean, like you said, you could tell he was really wanting to win this championship, but in the grand scheme of things, he was like, you know what? I finished second. He got the championship. I'm going to Cup. It doesn't bother me one way or the other.
No.
And I mean, that's a really mature way of going about things. He could have went out there and, done like Hamlin done and, last week at Martinsville and just got right in front of him and prevented him from burning out and celebrating. But he just said, you know what? Fair enough. He beat me.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen plenty of instances this year where, somebody used the bumper probably more than I think should have been allowed. But you got to let them race to an extent. I don't know if I'm okay with, just flat out spinning somebody, but, you got to let them race to an extent. Hang on a second. I got to hook this up.
Yeah, and I feel like this year we have seen more, what's the word I'm looking for? Controversy about that more this year than any other year.
Yeah.
And it's definitely in the lower series. We've seen it in the Cup Series a little bit, but definitely in the lower series, you saw guys really sticking their elbows out more often than, just clean racing. And I mean, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but there comes a point where it becomes where you're just going out there and wrecking a race car. And for a lot of these race teams, that can be costly in the long run.
Well, I watched the Martinsville races, and I thought there was a lot of disrespectful racing in the Truck Series, especially. I wouldn't mention drivers in particular, but I felt like there was a few guys that were driving way above their pay grade, and I know you've got to race for your team, you've got to race for your sponsor, but I don't know that you want to bump somebody that's doing the same thing as you are and feel good at the end of the day about it. And there's a line there that I think every driver has to step up to and say, I don't want to cross that. Or if that's what you're out to do, I mean, expect it back. It's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely going to happen to you one way or another.
Championship aside, Kyle Larson, congratulations on the Cup title. I don't know that there's been a more deserving driver in any season. Comparing stats, the only season I think that comes close is when Jeff Gordon won 13 in a season. And I mean, it was poor Mark Martin could win 20, and I don't think he could have kept up with him.
Yeah.
But so congrats to him. Congrats to Daniel Hemrick, Xfinity, and then Ben Rhodes in the Truck Series. What are some things you're looking at going into the offseason? Who are some guys that are going to start next year on a proverbial hot seat for you?
I think we may have chosen. I chose one guy. I chose was Cole Custer. Something we had talked about before, and I want to like Custer. He's got a decent body of work in the lower division, and he's a proven talent. But ever since he signed with SHR, it's he's just kind of blended in a little bit. And I get it. I mean, sometimes you go into a different series and you don't hit him out of the park all the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, he hasn't shown much of a flash at all in terms of finishes and such. I think he finished maybe in the top 20s in the standings this year.
I think it was like 26th or 27th.
I can't really remember. I looked at it earlier and a number blanks my mind, but
26th,
I mean, 26. Again, I mean, pretty much mid pack almost, closer to the rear of the field, if anything. And he's still he was with SHR, and I don't know. I think his seat's going to be in jeopardy if he's re-signed for next year. I really, really doubt if he performs like he did this year, going into 2023, I really think he's going to be searching for a seat. And the other driver I picked was Michael Mcdowell. Even though he won the Daytona 500, fair play to that. I'm not going to discredit that. That was a right place, right time, but with all super speedway races like that, the one thing I will say is racing is chaotic. And when you are at those Daytona, Talladega, all it takes is one wreck, one big one to wipe out the top 10, the top 15 on the last lap at the last corner, and you could win it. You could win the race by sheer accident.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's just how it goes. That's really just how it goes. After that win, it was just front row motorsports, normal, maybe underperforming front row. I mean,
I agree with both of those, honestly, because we talked before, we both agreed Cole Custer's, if there's one driver for sure, and you can make excuses and say, well, Ford was down. Ford was down all year. I mean, you look at the wins that they got, a lot of restrictor plate races. That's about it. A few here and there. It was not a typical good season. But next year, with a different car where everybody's supposed to be more level, if Cole Custer's still struggling, even a little, I'm talking like not contending for wins, not in the playoff talk, I think they make a change because, you remove those excuses and, you've got to produce. And I agree with Michael McDowell as well. That win was great. It gave them the funding to, I thought, get better as the year went along. That's a lot of money for winning first place at Daytona. That should have stocked the cupboard for them, and they should have come out in several races and have really good finishes. And it never came up. It never got better. It was all downhill. I mean, it was one of those, once the playoffs started, you knew he wasn't going to advance. There was no way.
yeah.
So he's got to be on that list. The two that I would say, I'd agree, Cole Custer. I'm going to go Eric Almirola. And I'll say it this way. If Eric Almirola didn't have a full-time sponsor that would follow him anywhere, I think he would have been out at Stewart-Haas already. But in this day and age, to get the backing that, he gets from Smithfield, that's rare. I mean, companies don't just fall over you to support you that much. And it's going to be, how long does that last without, consistent, they expect things back in a sponsorship. If they're not getting it, I expect them to pull the plug. He got a weird win at Loudon. Other than that, the entire year was a wash.
Yeah.
He looked really good at Phoenix, and I'll give him that. He looked really good at Martinsville, and I'll give him that. But that's way too late for making any kind of a championship stand. So I start him off on the hot seat. And, if he doesn't do better next year, if he doesn't make the playoffs next year, for sure he's gone, sponsor or not. Stewart Haas has to do something because we talked about earlier, Kevin Harvick's coming to an end of his career. And if he retired today, they have two guys that didn't make the round of 12. And no, one guy that didn't make the round of 12, two guys that didn't make the playoffs. So, I mean, that puts them in a grim situation. They have to get guys that can drive and grow quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I'm pretty excited for the Coliseum race. Have you been reading up on that much?
I have done some research on it. I, I was a little skeptical with them moving the Clash away from Daytona, moving it west, and I was again, I'm a very traditionalist NASCAR fan. Firecracker 400, Coke 600,
Yeah.
Southern 500, old, traditional NASCAR. But after Junior had talked about the next gen car, how it drives, especially at Bowman Gray Stadium, I mean, if you want any track that's similar to the LA Coliseum, I think Bowman Gray is a good example. And how he described it, I mean, if they were to go there in these cars, I think it would be very mundane, very par for the course in this era of NASCAR. But how he described the car, how it handles, the drive off, how good the brakes are. I mean, I'm excited. I think if it really works well, if the LA Coliseum works out really well this year, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing it on this, as a points paying race, even if I want to go that far, if it
That'd be
does
nice.
well. Oh yeah, be another
That'd be
short
nice.
track on the schedule.
Which I love short tracks. I look forward to races like Martinsville. Um, Anybody can sit back and watch Daytona and Talladega and, oh, my driver that never wins is in contention kind of stuff. But, the true grit comes out on these short tracks where it's so hard to pass, and you really see who's got a handle on the race car in places like that. And Richmond too. I've It's not one of my favorite short tracks. I think they've kind of gone away with some of the renovations they should have done to Richmond. They put that PJ5 or whatever it's called, the racing surface
Yeah,
stuff down, and I think it ruined a lot of the racing at Richmond. You can't do too wide anymore, but um, it's still a really good track. But you put 40 drivers hungry at Bristol to advance. That was an amazing race. And that's the kind of stuff that I look forward to every year. I mean, it's pressure.
yeah. I mean, if you want to see guys pull some moves that you wouldn't normally see, you put a short track in the playoffs. Better yet, make it a cutoff race. That, like Martinsville, where Martinsville's at right now, is near perfect.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we saw it last year with Kevin Harvick and what he did try to do to Kyle Busch. When you got a guy that's one position away from making the Final Four after having the season he had, I mean, it was
You
almost a
do anything.
given. Yeah, you do anything, and he did. He wrecked his car trying to do it, but he tried.
Yeah, and those are very strategically positioned races. Uh, Honestly, I was very kind of puzzled. When we moved the championship from Miami to Phoenix. Uh, I mean, it was a good move because Miami's it's a very bland track to me. I just don't know that Phoenix lives up to that. But after this race, it's kind of changed me a little bit. If there was one track though of all the schedule, I think if we were going to change the championship again, I would really like to see the title go to a place like the Brickyard, not the road course. The Brickyard 400. That's a track that is tough, but not too tough. But you've got to have the right setup. You've got to have the right crew chief to win.
Yeah,
we don't even race the Brickyard anymore. It's kind of sad. The crown jewel races are going away really quick.
Hmm.
Uh,
And yeah, I can agree with your opinion on the Homestead. I mean, they had a few good races, as a season finale, 2011, 2016, and mainly 2011 was the only reason that race was any good was because, I mean, Stewart had to win that race to win the championship. If he didn't win, it was going to be Edwards. So there was a lot of tension building for that race. And in 2016, I mean, you had Logano send it inside Carl Edwards and nearly wrecked the entire field.
yeah,
And I
that's
think that
fun.
gave Johnson the championship, pulling
Yeah,
that move.
it was
But
something about he passed him. Johnson passed Denny right before the caution came out. So when they restarted, Johnson took off or something like that. It was something weird like that. But yeah,
yeah, but I mean, other than to my memory, only those are the only two races that really stick out and are like, yes, those were good races. All the others just kind of blend, and I think that's really sad because I actually really like the design of Homestead. I mean, the progressive banking, the fact you can run right up against the wall. I mean, but I mean, it's just a bland racetrack for
I would
racing.
love to see more progressive banking tracks. Kansas is an excellent track. They're repaving Atlanta right now, and I don't think they're doing any kind of progressive banking, but that would be so cool. Atlanta's been a really good place for racing for a long time, not just NASCAR, Indy, a lot of places mirror what Atlanta did, and it hasn't ever been quite as good. I think back at some of the best races at Atlanta. I think about the first win for Harvick after Dale Sr. died. And I think about the one of the last races Earnhardt Sr. won, beating out Bobby Labonte by inches.
Yeah, yeah. Atlanta holds a lot of. Not only is it just one of the oldest tracks in NASCAR, for a long time it's one of the fastest tracks on NASCAR's schedule. It holds a lot of nostalgia for a lot of fans, and when I got word that they were repaving it and resurfacing, reconfiguring, I was like, "What are y'all doing?"
Yeah.
But really and truly, if this reworking of the track works out, and especially with this next gen car because it's an unknown property right now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it could save Atlanta because I mean, mile and a half ever since they started really tampering the horsepower, making it really low. These mile and a halves have suffered greatly with this very full throttle racing like you see at Daytona and Talladega, and it's really hurt. Like
Yeah.
Texas, Vegas, I mean, it's hurt them really bad. So if this whole Atlanta restructuring works out, I mean, that could save the track brilliantly. And it'll be a really good move too.
Yeah. I think it's something they should look at. Obviously, I'd highlight out they plan on doing that to Atlanta. They've already started repaving, but there's tracks that could absolutely benefit greatly from a progressive banking. Um, just one of the tracks that sticks out to me. Why not Pocono? Why not do just a little bit of progressive banking in 3 and 4? Coming back to that long straightaway, um, or even a place like New Hampshire, who has a little bit of that now, but not much. I mean, New Hampshire is one of the least favorite tracks of all the drivers on the circuit. They don't like going there.
Mhm.
It's impossible to pass, uh, because there's one groove now because of that traction compound. You've got to run below the yellow line or right against the wall. There's nothing in between,
Yeah.
and so it makes for rough racing. And I think if you bank it a little more underneath and give it a progressive at just a little, you know, I think that improves that track greatly.
Yeah, it wouldn't take a lot to really make that track good because I mean that was the problem with the original Homestead layout. That very flat corner, and a lot of drivers did not like it because you would have to run that bottom line all the way around the corner. You couldn't get to the outside and pass somebody. There was just no grip up there. So yeah, I mean, I agree. New Hampshire would benefit greatly from something like that.
It'd be so fun to see something like that. That would be a lot of work to do. I mean, I said that easily about Pocono, but that's that's a lot of money to just improve one turn, and it'd just be cool to see.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime. By the time they're ready to do something like that, everything's going to be virtual and probably won't even have cars on the track anymore. But
I hope it never has to come to that. But
flying NASCAR, oh man,
aerial Daytona.
no thanks.
No, that sounds. I don't like
dangerous.
That. Yeah, dangerous. Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go with that.
It's pretty dangerous as it is. Ask Ryan Newman how he feels about Daytona.
Oh, I was so on edge after that accident. Like I saw that wreck happen, and I was like, "Oh, that's bad." Especially when it took him so long to come out and say he's okay and all that.
Yeah.
Like I was nervous.
When I saw them cutting the roof off the car, I just expected, worst case scenario. Because I mean, that was a really hard hit right on top of the car.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all
right. So, let's move on a little bit. Give me one driver that overperformed maybe your expectations and underperformed for the season.
For the season. All right. So, for my better than expected performer, I would say Kyle Larson. I would have not expected him to come out swinging like he did. I mean, when he first got cut from Ganassi after the whole controversy, I was like, NASCAR just lost one of their best up and coming talents, and now he has a chance of not even coming back because who's going to sign him? Who's going to carry that baggage? And when Stewart was trying to sign him, I was like, well, Stewart Haas, they're doing really good right now. Kevin Harvick has 9 wins on the season. I mean, that would be a good fit for him. And when he finally signed with Hendrick, I was like, they're on the upswing with Elliott's championship. He might do well. He might get a win here or there, maybe make a playoff appearance. But championship, that's not likely. And then he comes out and 10 wins on the season, 20 let me see, where am I at?
26
26 top 10s, 20 top 5s, over 2,500 laps led. I mean,
yeah, he killed it.
Yeah, and just a championship caliber season for any driver of any era. I mean, that's why I picked him to win the championship. I mean, the kid was dominant, is the only word to describe it.
18 stage wins. The next closest was 10 for Denny Hamlin. I mean, almost twice as many as the next guy. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. For my worst than expected performer, I mean, if I just had to pick one driver, it'd be Kevin Harvick. Considering his previous season, I mean, how do you fall that far? I mean, look at his previous season stats, 2020 stats, and he has 9 wins, 20 top 5s, 27 top 10s, 1,500 laps led. I mean, a great season all across the board. And this season, he has no wins, 10 top 5s, 24 top 10s, and he only led 217 laps. I mean, that's a huge plummet. And he got him right around the same number of top 10s, but I mean, he halved his top 5s, and he has no wins. Eric Almirola, I think, is the only Stewart Haas Racing driver to win a race this season for that organization.
Yeah, it was.
And that is
sad.
Wow. That's just shocking. Like, if you would have told me last year Harvick wouldn't win a race, I said, no.
I'd have unfriended you.
Yeah, I'd have told you were crazy.
Yep.
But here it is in black and white. No wins, which is shocking, to say the least.
I kind of made an excuse for Stewart Haas, and it may still be true. You know, when Tony Stewart was doing his SRX thing, he was totally away from the team. He would do a few meetings, but that was it. He wasn't at the races. Very few races he was actually at. And Gene Haas isn't as active with the team as he used to be. So I feel like a lack of at track leadership really kind of stomped on any momentum they would ever get during the season. It started off bad, it never got better, and and that might still kind of be the case. But for the entire organization, all of Ford, to have this bad of a season, you just kind of, I feel bad for the competition next year because to not make it to the Champ 4 with a Ford means that Ford is really going to push hard with this new car. And it wouldn't surprise me if a Ford doesn't win the championship just because they've got to be embarrassed. They have to be
Yeah.
to not have a car in the Champ 4 and to have three cars that could have made it and none of them did. That's a tough pill.
Yeah, especially after a lot of the 2010s. I mean, especially with Stewart Haas Racing switching over to Ford. I mean, the Fords were winning about every
Killing
week.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and to have a season where you go to the final four, last race of the season, and you don't have a single driver battling for a championship with your make. I mean, that for Ford, that has to be such a gut punch,
It
especially.
really has to be.
Yeah. It, another thing you can make an excuse for Stewart Haas Racing with, I mean, you got to think of the other guy that's partnering with Stewart on this ownership deal, Gene Haas. And I mean, he's dealing with a lot right now with F1. He dealt with a lot of it last year, and they're not doing real well in F1. So I mean, he's got his deal going on. Stewart's got SRX. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
there's not much of a leadership there this season, and that could be a reason why they didn't do so well. Felt like they
Uh,
underachieved.
I would imagine there was quite a few races where Greg Zipadelli was the man. Everybody went to Greg Zipadelli for answers, and I'm sure there's a few times that he said, "Ask Tony." So
Yeah,
that's not a good look, for a championship caliber team. And hopefully Tony, now that he's got that series set up, he can let somebody else run it next year and focus on NASCAR because I do feel like without those guys there, the team struggled. I don't think there was continuity at all. I'm going to throw my overachiever out. I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney because to me, I've never been very high on Blaney, and it's nothing against him. Um, he's just never struck me as a championship caliber driver. There's potential. I've never really put him in that category, and he was pretty close this time. 3 wins on the year, 20 top tens, 11 top fives. People are going to rein in saying, well, restrictor plate racing, he didn't win but one of those. He had a good season. He definitely achieved a lot more than I expected. I picked him to win one race and not even 15 top 10. So he definitely was above where I had him. Especially in a year where Ford struggled, he was the only Ford driver with multiple wins. So, kudos to him.
yeah,
Uh, the driver, I would say, underwhelmed. Uh, you know, after sorry, after winning the Daytona Road Course race, Christopher Bell went dark. He had a few races where he contended at times, but based on where he was preseason projections, everybody was picking him to win 4 to 5 races. And I mean, he won one race, and I don't want to call it a fluke, but I mean, it's one of those scenarios where he had fresher tires at the end of that race, and he ran through the field. So I can't really say it was, driver inhibited. It may have been strategy inhibited. And from then on, I mean, it's like he just wasn't really much of a factor. So he's my underwhelming driver to drive that equipment and not do better than that. 0 stage wins, by the way. Um, I don't know how you can go an entire season, even get a win and drive Gibbs Toyota not at least get a stage win. So I'm going to go with Christopher Bell. I know some people are going to disagree and say, well, he's still young. He is still young. But in the points, he finished behind Kurt Busch, who is well past his prime and has much lesser equipment. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and especially with a team that's out the door pretty much by now. They got
closed.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree with both of those. Ryan Blaney was definitely on my radar for overachiever. I mean, I think he's got a lot of talent as a driver, but he's again, like a lot of these really young drivers, they kind of all blend in with one another. And Ryan Blaney to me was one of those. But when he come out and like you said, he's got as a Ford driver, he had the most wins amongst them all. I mean, that's no slouch. It's just like
Right.
Alex Bowman. I mean, he's got 4 wins on the season, but he finished 14th in the standings. I mean, the kid did. I mean, for those races, he did really well. He showed the talent. He's just not consistent. And Ryan Blaney was both a winning driver and he was consistent. He made the championship, he made the playoffs, and that's not something to go take lightly. I mean,
No.
especially with Ford, like you said, Ford maybe coming back in next year and gonna try and win a championship. He'd be definitely my top 5 to pick for one of those Ford drivers winning a championship.
Yeah, and with Brad Keselowski going to Roush, I mean, you could take his name out of the championship contender hat for a couple of years, and you might just put Ryan Blaney right in that spot now.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and agreeing with you on Christopher Bell. I mean, after that road course, I mean, where did he go? Did it just? I mean, granted, that was a really well done strategy by his team to get him up there, get him on the fresh tires, and on the Daytona road course. I mean, tires is a lot of things. I mean, you got the infield section, and then you got the 2 bank corners. You got that fast chicane. I mean, tires are everything on that racetrack.
Yeah.
And for that was a very good call to get him on them fresh tires. He won the race. I mean, fair play to him, but where did he go throughout the rest of the season? Like you said, 0 stage wins. I mean,
yeah, that's a shocking number for a guy they picked to win, 4 to 5 races. It's something I find crazy. Alex Bowman had those 4 wins. He had 5 DNFs. That is really inconsistent. And some of those was restrictor plate, throw those in there, but 5 DNFs. That's tied for the most of anyone that made the playoffs. And I mean,
jeez.
the only drivers that had more were guys that either ran part-time or it was guys like Quinn Half, Anthony Alfredo, and poor Alfredo, he's such a good driver. He gets caught up in the worst crap wrecks ever. I mean, at Texas, he was in line to get a really good finish at Texas, and somebody cut a tire and spun him, and then he hits the wall. I would say 7 of his 9 DNFs were probably somebody else. I mean, that's the kind of luck the guy's got.
Yeah. I mean, luck is luck a lot of times. And I mean, some people are just unlucky. And I mean, fair play. I mean, you can't really control what other people are going to do, what happens around you. It's just the only thing you can control is what your car is doing and what you can do. And sometimes, like you said on them super speedways, mentioning Alex Bowman and his DNS, I mean, you're mid pack and a wreck starts happening in front of you. I mean, where can you go? You got a car to your outside, you got a car to your inside. I mean, the only thing you can do is get on the brakes, go low, and hope and pray that everything goes well. And for Anthony Alfredo, I mean, a lot of his DNS just weren't his fault. They're just wrong place, wrong time. And I mean, I think, we might see him in the same car next year. I definitely want to see him with a more full-time ride and with a little bit more respectable equipment because I really think he could, just a few races out of the year, he could really catch fire and make the admission well worth the price.
Yeah. Well, I think with Alfredo, they were in the process of selling that Charger that he drives I think it was supposed to be the one that 2311 was getting for Kurt Busch. And front row backed out. So I think that's so they could keep Alfredo full time next year. He was on the show. We had him on here 3 weeks ago. Him and Keegan Leahy were on here, and I brought it up. He didn't exactly answer yes or no, but I feel like they're going to keep him. I mean, he was really close to getting that Rookie of the Year this year, and he's a great young driver. I don't know. He's a guy that you erase those DNFs, and he's probably higher in the points than Custer. And if I had to average it out, he's probably around where Bubba Wallace is in about 21st. He started the same amount of races. He had some really good runs, and the runs that he did have that were well are a lot of the races that he got wrecked out of.
Yeah.
So you turn those misfortunes into good finishes, and we might be sitting here talking about, Rookie of the Year by far, Anthony Alfredo. So next year might be different. Next year he might be sitting in the catbird seat. He might be the one stealing a win for Front Row Motorsports at Daytona. How cool would that be?
That would be very awesome to see. Anthony Alfredo, 2022 Daytona 500 champion. I mean,
I'm going to tag him in this video. Enjoy that.
I mean, that would be that would be the highlight of the season for me. Not mainly because I just like his name, Anthony Alfredo, the double A.
They call him Fast Pasta. That's his nickname. Yeah.
That's good. Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
So I know that there's probably, this is going to be a controversial thing. Matt DiBenedetto with his Let's Go Brandon stuff this weekend. I don't know if you read a lot on it, but
I have not heard about this. Ooh.
He exercised his right of free speech while looking for a ride, and I have a feeling it's going to cost him. He had a white nationalist, is what I'm told, with him pre-race, and was chanting "Let's go, Brandon," which they asked fans not to do because Joe Biden was in attendance, and he still did it. So he apologized. I'm sure he'll have to do some sensitivity training like Kyle Busch, but any ride that he may have been in line for Cup is probably not calling.
Yeah, that's,
unfortunate.
Yeah, unfortunate. Yeah, let's say unfortunate, but what do you say to that? Especially if you're in Matt DiBenedetto's position right now. You don't have a ride lined up fully for next season, and then you do this.
Yeah.
If I was him, I wouldn't have done that. That just a bonehead move.
I think
in
that
general,
sitting where he was, prior to this race, absolutely nothing lined up. I mean, I still think his best option is Penske's 22 full time in the Xfinity Series. That's probably no longer available. Roger Penske is he's very outspoken about having all of his drivers mind their P's and Q's, represent the company very well. And after that, I don't know that. I don't want to compare it to what Kurt Busch did to Jerry Punch at Miami because those are two very, very different incidents, but it carries about the same weight.
Politics, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. I don't think politics belong in NASCAR. I think that's something that should always be separate. So to push the issue is probably going to be frowned upon by more than just a few fans. Anyway, any last thoughts, off-season moves you're looking forward to before we go?
Off-season moves I'm looking forward to. I think it's going to be interesting to see Keselowski with Roush now. I mean, I'm so used to seeing him in that number 2 car.
Oh man.
And when I heard when it got confirmed that he was moving to Roush, I was like, that's an odd move. I mean, he's
Yeah.
going from Penske, the team he's been a part of since he started in Cup, and he's going to Roush, a team that has nowhere near the capacity they used to. I mean, I remember early 2000s. I mean, you had Kenseth, you had Kurt Busch, you had Greg Biffle. I mean, you had some talent on that team, and to have that team
Jeff
become
Burton.
Jeff Burton,
Mark Martin.
Mark Martin, can't forget them, especially Mark Martin. To move to that team now, I mean, I guess in the long run, he probably sees something in that team that we don't. And I mean, fair play to Roush. He's been in this sport a while. He's got a championship with Matt Kenseth. He has multiple second places with Mark Martin.
Kurt Busch too. Got a
Yeah,
championship.
and Kurt Busch, 2004. Yeah, true. I think it's going to be interesting this coming year for him to get that team going again.
I think his deteriorating health had a lot to do with it. When they had that press conference and at the NASCAR Hall of Fame, they announced, Brad Keselowski's coming on board. Jack did not look like he was even halfway there. And it was sad because the man walked the garage for 40 years. And, when you thought about great teams in the 90s and the early 2000s, and even the 80s, I mean, Roush Racing was one of the first two teams you talked about. I mean, they were great before Hendrick was even great.
Yeah.
And so it's sad to see we're at that point where Jack Roush is not going to be around NASCAR anymore. I think it's very soon. This may have been his last full-time season, even having anything to do with the team. So I think it was definitely time to bring in someone more hands-on, and Brad is that. He is compulsive about the small things, and that's what you want in a hungry young owner.
Yeah, and I mean he owns a truck team. Brad Keselowski does, so he knows a lot of the ins and outs that goes into owning a team, running a team. And I mean, it's like you said, it's sad to think about, us losing Jack Roush. He's a legend in this sport. I mean, if he had never entered NASCAR, I mean, would you ever hear of Mark Martin? Would you ever hear of a Matt Kenseth or a Joey Logano for that matter? Jack Roush, I mean, it's like you said, he's Jack Roush. He's just like Rick Hendrick or Joe Gibbs. I mean, for him to be, especially at that press conference, because I felt for him. I mean, it broke your heart. You just felt like, man, I wonder how long does he have?
Yeah, it's happens to everybody, but it's always sad to see. So I do think that was the biggest reason Brad Keselowski was even presented with that opportunity. Not to mention, Cindric was going to come up and drive the 21 next year. I think there was a lot of pressure to add more young talent sooner rather than later. Brad has been in it for the championship several times, even last year. I think he had a real chance at beating Chase up until the last pit stop. So I wouldn't say Brad's losing a step at all. I would say that this is a good opportunity for him to show that it's more than the equipment, that Brad's a good driver. And he'll get that opportunity because I don't think he's going to sit in very good equipment for a few years.
Yeah.
The off-season move that hasn't happened yet that I think is still brewing, that 22 ride in Xfinity is open. Harrison Burton might be the guy for that. He might run both. now that he's driving Penske and Cup, well, basically Penske is driving for the Wood Brothers.
Yeah.
That might be an option. I still do feel like that ride is a championship ride, and they're going to find someone, even if they have to poach them from another team, someone to take that. I don't see any Cup offseason moves left that are going to shake things up at all. I think everybody's just about set in stone. There's a few small teams like uh, who the team that just bought Starcom. I don't remember who they are. Um,
Oh
but they
Lord.
haven't officially made an announcement on who their driver is yet either.
I just heard about this too. I think Saturday, and I can't remember who just bought Starcom out. Which, by the way, I mean Starcom, their last race was Sunday.
Yeah, they're
I
done.
mean, they didn't achieve. They didn't, they weren't a huge team in NASCAR, but I mean, they were the lovable underdog, and for a lot of race teams, I mean,
Yeah.
sucks for them. I mean, I hate it, but I mean, it's the cutthroat world of NASCAR.
Well, Matt Tift, I was talking to him probably about a month ago. We're talking about transitioning to the new car. The thing that sticks out in his talk was Live Fast Motorsports right now, they survive on buying used parts. There are no used parts with the new car because they haven't used any. So, he and BJ McLeod, who co own that team, they're trying to figure out how they're going to afford the new cars. They don't exactly have sponsors lining up at the door. And it's shameful because they're a good team. They have a lot of guys that have traveled well with NASCAR. And if given the right opportunity, I think they can finish top tens. I think they can get them.
Yeah,
Uh, but with the cost of the new car, at the time they weren't even sure, if they were going to be able to afford to buy two or three new cars, which is the minimum to show up at Daytona. I mean, you wreck one in practice or the duels, you're done.
yeah,
So hopefully they get it figured out. But I think we're just about done, man. I think we had a good show.
yeah.
I
Good.
think we covered some bases. Again, congrats to the champs.
Yeah,
Uh, Gonna take a lot to win it back to back. So good luck.
yeah.
Uh,
Especially with a new car.
yeah,
Especially with a new car.
empty notebook.
Empty
That's what I'll call
notebook.
it. So anyway, don't forget to tune in on Wednesdays, 7 Eastern. We have blown coverage right here on ASAP Sports Network. Thank you to Dustin. He's going to be around for a while. We're not shutting down. Uh, we're going to run all the way through Daytona. And you actually will have a race by yourself in uh, February because I will be at the Daytona 500 and won't be able to stream.
Oh,
So gear up for it.
I like that. I like that.
Be ready for that. That first race, that first show on that Monday, it's gonna be wild. You have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, no, we mentioned the new car a lot, but I mean, when we mention the new car, it's going to change a lot in the NASCAR world.
Yeah,
I mean, we mentioned, you know, I remember when they were bringing that car in when they announced it was supposed to cut costs for a lot of teams, and with the way that car is built, I was like, how in the world is that supposed to be cutting costs? We're going from sheet metal, we're going to carbon fiber, which is way more expensive. I mean, we're going to
the
see a lot of small teams either leave or get bought out, one or the other, or merge.
the cost cutting comes in when they buy the chassis from NASCAR and the manufacturers instead of having it made. Uh, but that's not exactly helping because they're laying off employees who normally make these chassis at the big shops like Hendrick and Gibbs and Stuart Haas and those guys that were fabricators. They are finding other work or they're going home. Sad,
Yeah,
but that's where the cost cutting is coming from. It's not necessarily coming from the cost of the car because they're technically spending more money on the car.
sheesh.
Yeah, that's the downside that
That's
nobody wants to talk about.
yeah. I mean, no one likes getting their job laid off, but I mean, wow.
Yep. They said 600 employees for Hendrick. I would imagine they probably have to lay off 50 to 100 because they don't need them anymore. They don't make chassis anymore.
No.
Sucks.
Yeah, that sucks for those guys. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Dustin, it was great to have you. We'll be chatting during the week. And we will be back next Monday, same time, 7 Eastern time, 6 Central. Don't forget to watch. There's plenty of other shows on ASAP. Thanks to Tony. Thanks to Jay. Freddie, you guys are awesome. We appreciate all you do. And we will see y'all Monday.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're out in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.